Some Advent reflections on faces and masks. Entering the season of Advent during a pandemic might just help us hear something new or see something from a fresh angle. Believe me, I'm as sick of this stupid pandemic and all the precautions and restrictions as anyone else. But sometimes our challenging experiences bend us into a new posture where things look different than before. Our readings for this first Sunday of Advent register our distress when it feels like God's face is hidden from us. It's as if the psalmist is complaining that God's wearing a mask. Only the mask covers not just God's nose and mouth, but the entirety of God's face. These are the prayers of people longing to see God's face. Show us your face, the psalmist cries. Let us see the real you. Our lives are hard, our steps unsure, and we long for the light of your face to shine on us. These themes of faces shining, faces hidden and veiled, might speak to us during a season when we're all wearing masks. Do you remember the first mask you wore at the beginning of the pandemic? We had refinished our cabinet, so I had in our garage, I had some construction masks. You know, they're supposed to keep the sawdust out of your mouth. So I thought, hey, if they can keep the sawdust out, surely they'd keep the virus out too. After that, I started wearing the disposable light blue masks. And I remember feeling self-conscious when I first started wearing masks in public. These masks are for doctors, I thought to myself. Masks are for people who live in countries where the air quality is bad or the healthcare system's unreliable. Later, I began wearing cloth masks made by people in the local community. When Stephanie ordered some masks online, I remember thinking, she's overdoing this. Why are we spending money on masks when we're only going to be wearing them for what? Maybe 2, 3, 4 weeks tops? Here in the Midwest, we watched as the virus surged on the coasts. We started wearing masks back then, even though the virus still felt a long way off. As weeks turned into months, as cases multiplied in our area, we discovered that we might as well figure out what kind of mask we want to be wearing. Some of us still use those disposable masks. Some of us have masks that other people made for us. Some of us have purchased masks online or in a store. Some of you wear masks with messages or funny sayings. Some of you even go as far as make sure that your mask complements the color of your outfit. If you're like me, it probably took you a while to find the right kind of mask, a mask that fits your face and stays put when you talk. Some of you like the gator mask where you can pull up and pull it back down. Some are now wearing the whole face shield or a face shield over a mask. Double duty. Now, wearing a mask can be annoying, of course. Don't get me wrong. I know that wearing a mask is a simple act of caring for other people. And I'm not going to waste any time here arguing with anti-maskers who feel like their civil rights are being violated or that science hasn't yet proven that masks are effective. These conversations with people committed to conspiracy theories but utterly uninterested in curiosity and critical thinking, these have proven to be less than productive. But look, I do get the frustration. Wearing a mask is inconvenient. I've gone to the store a few times only to realize that I needed to go back home because I forgot my mask. It bothers me when I have to keep tugging at my mask because it won't stay in place when I talk. They make my beard itchy. Sometimes my face gets hot. I get it. But I suppose the worst thing about masks for many of us is that they make it harder to feel connected to other people. Those who have a hard time hearing find it helpful to read lips, and you can't see other people's mouths moving when they're behind a mask. In our schools, students miss having full access to the emotions and the expression of their friends and classmates. The same thing holds for teachers and parents, for grandparents and friends. We miss seeing one another's faces. And so I suppose it shouldn't surprise us that masks have become a flashpoint for our frustration, a symbol of our distress. Masks are more than mere face coverings. They represent a time in our lives when we've been overwhelmed by uncertainty, fear, disappointment, missed opportunities, and a whole spate of arguments about how best to live together. The psalmist's prayer to see God's face, the psalmist's longing for God's face to shine into the tangled forest of our distress, these quests for illumination and intimacy continued to shape the earliest followers of Jesus. In the letter that we know as 2 Corinthians, Paul can say, quote, "For God who said, 'Let light shine out of darkness,' made his light shine in our hearts, to give us the light of the knowledge of God's glory displayed in the face of Christ." As we begin our Advent journey towards Christmas in this most unusual, most taxing, most trying of years, we remember that the arrival of Jesus is the arrival of God's face. When you see the face of Christ, you have seen the face of God. There is not some other different God back behind the mask. Jesus from Nazareth, this brown face, this immigrant face, this hospitable, welcoming face, this Middle Eastern face, this unmarried face, this kind, merciful, nonviolent, dying face. This is the face of God. This is the unmasked God, who only masks the brightness for the sake of our puny minds and our feeble faculties. God is careful not to overwhelm us with the brightness so that we can become friends with God and friends with one another. Babies love playing peekaboo. We adults do too. We love it because it's so delightful to see a baby smile and to hear them laugh. It's not a very complicated game. You hide your face and then you uncover your face. And this game is endlessly fascinating for infants. It's cross-cultural. Babies from all around the world love this game. One writer put it like this, quote, "An early theory of why babies enjoy peekaboo is that they're surprised when things come back after being out of sight. This may not sound like a good basis for laughs to you or I with our adult brains, but to appreciate the joke, you have to realize that for a baby, nothing is given. They're born into a buzzing confusion and gradually have to learn to make sense of what's happening around them. You know that when you hear my voice, I'm usually not far behind. And you know that when a ball rolls behind the sofa, it still exists. But think for a moment, you had to come to that certainty as an adult." The Swiss developmental psychologist Jean Piaget called this principle object permanence. And Piaget suggested that babies spend the first 2 years of their lives working this out. And of course, those 2 years are prime peekaboo time. Looked at this way, the game isn't a joke, but helps babies test and retest a fundamental principle of existence, that things stick around even when you can't see them. Like infants, we sometimes grow anxious when we can't sense the divine face that settles us and makes us feel safe and secure. We don't like walking in the dark. We want some light on the path before us so that we can keep our footing. And it might seem odd to us that the light and love that sustains the whole world shines through the ordinary face of Jesus. But Advent is the time we have to adjust our eyes to this new light. And even so, there might be long stretches of our lives when the only light we have comes to us from the very ordinary faces around us. This is the calling of which Paul speaks, that our ordinary faces can become, like the moon, the reflected light and love that someone else needs to see. Can you overhear Paul speaking to you here at the beginning of Advent when he says, quote, "You have been enriched in every way. There is no gift you lack as you wait for our Lord Jesus Christ to be revealed." Friends, this holiday season might be the strangest and the hardest that many of us have experienced in years. In the pain of our losses, in the fracturing of some of our relationships, and the disappointment of so many of our assumptions, we long for light, for love, for healing, for intimacy and friendship. Show us your face, O God. Let us see your light reflected in the face of Jesus himself, even as we face one another, even as we face an uncertain Advent. Let the light of your face shine upon us. Amen.